Assalamu alaikum. Come on, we can do better than that. Assalamu alaikum. Wonderful, wonderful. I want to treat 1 billion people. And I want to do that because we are in a moment of time where this is now possible. Earlier this year, I stepped away from a role that I truly loved. In fact, I surprised many people, including my wife and children, and even myself. I got to work, or I used to work, at the Al Khan University, where I actually was a medical student, and at this point, I was dean. I loved working with the students. I admired the faculty that I got to partner with. And I walked away not because something pushed me out, but because I felt this pull of this moment in time where technology, I truly believe, can transform healthcare and truly unlock health for all. Now, to explain to you how that pull has happened, let me take you to where I grew up in. I grew up in a place called Huntington, Indiana. It's in the rural Midwest United States. And as you can see here, it's quite a beautiful place. The sunrises are just phenomenal. But this sunshine doesn't shine bright on everybody as far as healthcare goes. In fact, many of us know that as far as healthcare outcomes go, geography is your destiny, that your outcome can pretty much be predicted where you're getting care or where you're from. In fact, I learned this very early on when I was 8 years old, and we had to drive 26 miles for my baby sister Anila to be born. And one of Anila's classmates is actually here in the audience today. There you are. And so I learned early on that healthcare access is, of course, a big issue. And growing up in the States, that was even true for the richest country on earth. And then I had the privilege of moving to Pakistan, in Karachi. And this is, of course, you might expect that in a very rural area, there's lack of access to care. But this picture is from just last year. And you can see hundreds of people. This scene happens every day. Hundreds of people waiting in line to receive just a few minutes with a physician or other healthcare provider. And you can imagine how difficult it is for those doctors to provide care in just a short period of time so that they can take all those patients. Would they be able to really do a proper history? Would they be able to really do a good physical exam? Would they be able to provide the counseling to the patient to assure them that they would be able to get better? Do they have the time to do that? And I think most of us understand that they certainly do not. Now, with that background, I got to go to medical school, and this is a picture from 1993. I think I look a little different now. And what happened is that when I was in medical school, it was so amazing to see all of the medical knowledge that so many of you get to read, right? But what was even more tough to see, that we had all that knowledge, but getting it to the patients was actually really tough. In fact, when you think about it, almost everything you need to know to treat patients is there. But there remains a big gap in getting that knowledge to people, what the policy people, and Dr. Zafar is right here, he taught me about this, the know-do gap. To add to this, science, in fact, advances at a pretty rapid speed. And it keeps on going forward. So you see science keeps moving forward, and that gap not only continues to stay, but in fact, the bridge becomes to widen more and more between what actually the patients need and what we know we can do for them. That, somebody needs to bridge that gap. And that became kind of my life's defining purpose when I finished medical school, and therefore I chose to go do a public health degree, despite the fact that I always wanted to be a surgeon. In fact, what I was able to do was to become a surgeon and do public health work at the same time. I was very privileged to work at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, which till today is known as one of the best hospitals in the world, and back then was, of course, ranked #1. In our trauma bay, we could treat, with anything. In fact, even if you were super severely injured, your survival was 98%. We could save almost everyone. But the trouble was that even with all that advanced technology, all of that incredible know-how, all of those really smart people, those patients who we took care of, they would go back to communities ridden with endemic violence, with racism, with lack of opportunity. And that, again, geography, more than anything, predicted their destiny. So much so that we found that for patients who didn't have health care insurance, they were 50% more likely to die if they had an injury. If they were in a car crash or any kind of injury, they were 50% more likely to die. And please understand, in this instance, it's not about access, because the ambulance will bring any patient in. It's just about the whole circumstance of life that leads them to have a worse outcome. And so that, again, was something that we tried to work on. And from Hopkins, I got recruited to work at the Center for Surgery and Public Health, which was a joint program between Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and Harvard School of Public Health in Boston. And that was a big national role, and we were able to convene a huge group of people to put together an agenda for impacting these kinds of healthcare disparities that were occurring. And we worked with the American College of Surgeons and the US National Institutes of Health, and we're able to bring together all these stakeholders to create a national agenda focused on surgical disparities research, in fact, funded to the tune of $250 million. And so now you're thinking, okay, this trauma surgeon is making progress. There is some light illuminating somewhere. You are making something, but still, that no-do gap, the needs remain immense. Now, I was doing this kind of work when one day I got a phone call from my previous colleagues at the Aga Khan University, and they said, we'd love for you to come back to Pakistan. And that became an incredible privilege to come work at AKU. I came in 2019. In 2020, of course, COVID happened. And during COVID, we realized that guideline concordant care was one of the main reasons why Pakistan did so well during COVID. In fact, the government worked so well with different parts of the national establishment, and that really helped create a national command and control system that enabled Pakistan to do well. And fundamental to that were the creation of guidelines on how to treat COVID. Learning from that experience, at AKU, we worked together to create the AKU Manual of Clinical Practice Guidelines. This has 140 guidelines for diseases that are common amongst folks in Pakistan, and the potential is that it could impact the care of more than 20 million people. And we're very proud of it. In fact, this became such a big thing that we had the Prime Minister of the country come inaugurate these guidelines earlier in the year. And you can go to guidelines.aku.edu to see these guidelines. One might say, from a policy perspective, this is wildly successful, because this was inaugurated in January, and now this app and this book has been widely disseminated. More than 12,000 people use this app, and more than 50,000 patients have received care using these guidelines. So would you say that's a pretty successful thing in just a few months? I mean, you get a book out, you get things going, you'd say, wow, this is great. But still, think about it. I want to treat 1 billion people. How is 50,000 going to make a dent? Something that has the full force of the government and everyone else, all the intellectuals, even that will take a long, long time. Now, adding to this, right? Remember I talked about guidelines and how you can improve care. Adding to this, let's think about whose experience is in these guidelines. We tried to get all the evidence we could from Pakistan, but turns out that if you look at medical knowledge, just think about this. If you look at medical knowledge, only places where there's a lot of research that happens actually contribute to the guidelines and treatments that we use every day. If you think about it, 90% of the world's population has had no say in the kinds of treatment that they end up receiving. More than 90%. They have lived that medicine, or they expect to get that medicine, but they have never been able to be part of shaping it. I think we can change that. I think we can get through the no-do gap, and I think we can get everybody's lived experience to inform their care. And the way we can do this now is through artificial intelligence. Think about it. You can have an AI agent on your phone. Just think about this. You can have your AI agent on your phone 24 hours a day. You ever have any medical issue, take it out, start asking a question. It tells you, it interacts with you, sees what your problems are. If you need to be seen by a doctor, it takes your full history, makes an appointment with a doctor, brings them online right then, or takes you to that, or sets an appointment for you to meet the doctor. Once you're with the doctor, the agent can be with there. If you don't speak the same language, it can translate for you. It can create the whole note for you. The doctor doesn't have to do so much work. Think about the experience for the doctor who is taking care of all those patients in line. If they could get everybody's symptoms and histories in advance on a screen in front of them, and so the patient comes, sit with them, they talk to the patient, examine the patient, they don't have to do much documentation or anything like that. Everything is organized by AI. And then most importantly, when the patient goes home, the patient is able to go back to that same agent and ask what the doctor said and get experience from them. In fact, we have now done this for about 20,000 patients through this agent that we call Hami. You know what the most amazing thing is when patients use Hami? One of them said to me in Urdu, "Doctor Saab, inhone hamari baat sun li." You see how powerful that is? This agent actually listened to me. And they ask him all sorts of questions. They'll ask him things like, am I supposed to take this medicine with water or with milk? Very common. Simple things. That's what they do. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about when we first started putting this into clinical practice. You know, I was a little worried about using AI. I was worried about hallucinations. I was worried about safety more than anything. And so what we decided to do is that we would have a young doctor sit in the room when this agent would interact with the patient. And since I happened to be a dean of a medical school, I had a lot of access to really smart recent graduates. Many of you, like in the background there. And what we found was that those smart doctors would listen to the conversation and then say, you know, Dr. Adil, if the LLM model could be just configured in a way that the agent would say this before that, or talk about this problem before the other problem, it would do a better job. So we had this incredible curation, and now we have about 50 clinical AI fellows working in clinics in the United States, in Pakistan, now about to go to the Middle East, where they sit and listen to these conversations, and they're continuously perfecting the model so that the AI agent just gets better and better and better. And we're so grateful and so proud of all the people who put this together and look forward to the future where this technology continues to get even more accessible to all people who need it. And the cost of this potentially is just going to keep on getting lower and lower, so the number of patients that we can treat will keep on getting increased. But think about the bigger picture here. Not only will we be able to use AI to get across that bridge, to close that no-do gap, but also we'll be able to make it such that the lived experience of a child in Peshawar will be able to, because the data will all get connected, will be able to improve the care of a kid in Pocatello, Idaho. A woman who's getting care in Ghana could inform the care of a woman in Boston. And rather than the 10% telling everybody what they're supposed to do, the entire world will illuminate in self. And that will become truly people-driven medicine. And I believe AI will have the ability to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that every lived life experience is worth learning from. In fact, the world's biggest clinical trial is the lived experience of the billions of people in the world. And I think that each of these experiences can help save lives. I think that saving each life is a worthwhile endeavor. And I think that finally, we have the tools and technology to make it such that each life saves one another, and we finally get to health for all. My name is Adil Haider. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope I can convince some of you in the audience and online to join us in this mission of treating 1 billion people. Thank you very much. Thank you. Before I step down, I just want to make one final point. When I was a teenager, early on, I watched on television a surgeon performing a cardiac bypass at the National Institute of Cardiovascular Disease. It is such a privilege to come to that surgeon's and their family's amazing medical center, and it's a privilege to be sitting next to you, Surgeon Rahman. Thank you so much.